Isn't it time that we have a national conversation as a country? The economy is tanking, taxes are rising, things are going down the tubes. All we can hear is all about political peccadillos and chicanery. It is time that we had a conversation in this country. It is time that we declutter and have a real conversation. And this is Siasa Bomba. I am Dibala Nair. Welcome to today's installment of Siasa Bomba. My name is Dibala Ainer. Right, today we are going to turn our focus on matters gender. And this is all about, if you may remember on the other episode, we are pegging our thoughts on gender and population and also youth and population. We shall also be looking at security and population and social impact of that as well. Today is gender roles vis-a-vis population growth. How can this become an agenda in our elections and law reforms process? And to help me drive the show with me is none other than Daisy M. Danny, who is his Executive Director at the Community Advocacy and Awareness Trust, that is CRON Trust, a governance, development, and women rights enthusiast, a practitioner with several years of experience working in the field, coordinator of the National Women's Steering Committee, a platform, I should say, which brings together individuals, organizations, and networks drawn from the national to the county level, working in women's political and economic emancipation to harness their collective voice and strengthen strengthened onto one national platform. And of course, also we have as well Honorable Adelina Mwao. She's the current Deputy Governor of Makueni County. She has 5 years of experience in the 9th Parliament drafting legislations, motions, and budgets. She's a gender expert and holds a master's degree in development studies from the Institute of Development Studies, The Hague, that is in Holland. Now you know the drill. You can head over to our Twitter handle, and of course you can use the hashtag Siasa Bomba. Right, let me just get right into it, and should I say Happy New Year? Daisy, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
It's been a long while.
It's been a while.
Yes.
Yes.
And also, Mheshimiwa Adelina, good to see you as well. Yeah, there's
Good
a lot
to
that we
see
can
you
talk about, but primarily today, it's all about gender. Right, just to lay the groundwork, as far as we know, the state has really focused on gender mainstreaming. We're talking about access to public resources for women, which have improved significantly. Even so, bias in gender roles has been stagnant. But we can begin with the brass tacks. Gender, as a definition, is not really an unclear definition, and people sometimes really confuse gender and women. Let's just begin with you, Daisy.
It's true. For most people, gender equals women. I remember there was some time back when we used to go to the Department of Planning, seeking to have discussions with the Director of Planning around gender-responsive budgeting. And whenever we walked in, he would be, gender have arrived. and so it was
In the face of gender.
yeah, so, and for many people, gender really means women. And I think also the confusion is bolstered now when we look at the way we fill our forms. Previously, it used to indicate sex, male or female, but now it indicates gender. So for many people, gender translates to sex, which it is not, because it's really, gender is a social construct. It's really about how society assigns roles to men and women. That's really what it is. And it varies from society to society, tribes, So it's fluid, and it is determined by culture and norms in different places. Really, that's in a nutshell.
Right, it's becoming fluid as well, because also in that particular field, things are changing. We can see we have the intersex right now. We have transgender assignment, reassignment, as it were. How then do we define a gender, given those also dynamics as well? Briefly. I know this is a very ticklish issue, right? Maybe Daisy, she don't want to tackle it, but I know Adelina, she's a brave one.
Yeah, I want to agree with Daisy that even gender is more, it's in the 90s, when we actually started to conceptualize and understand what is gender, we were getting there. But now gender has become women. As a deputy governor, most of the time I'm being called gender. All the people I associate with, the young women I associate with, are being called gender. Those are the gender. Those are deputy governors, gender women, gender women. But it even gets more complicated when you come to issues like is it trans?
Gender,
Yeah,
transgender.
yeah. This year we actually, in Makueni County, we actually celebrated the International Day for Transgender. And people are starting to, of course, in the last population census, of course they were being recognized. But there are other issues that we actually not likely to address in the next 10 years, because the Constitution itself prohibits, for example, lesbians to actually come out and talk of their rights. So I think it is important for us to really get to analyze, because gender is actually getting people to respond to people's rights questions. It's when you talk of human rights, you're actually talking of addressing issues of gender within the human rights sphere. So if we cannot, even for example, people living with disability, we most of the time recognize the men as disabled. The women really are hardly visible. So it is, we need to come to terms with actually doing an analysis so that we can respond to people's different needs.
Right.
And those ones that we are actually ashamed, because the Constitution really gives them no rights. It's time actually we start opening our eyes and know that we are living with homosexuality among us, and we need to start addressing that.
We need to start addressing that, and
Yeah.
Daisy, this comes to you because yours is advocacy. Are you ready to embrace, such narratives that are coming to the fore very strongly? They're being pushed. People have agendas at the end of the day. When we classify, we talk about, gender reassignments. All right, that's diametrically different from, lesbians and homosexuals at the end of the day. This is gender reassignment. Now you're a man, you're a woman.
Well,
And then we become issues of also we have the bathroom dilemma. Do I go to a male's because I have maybe this masculine feature still at the end of the day?
Dibal, this is, it's a conversation, but it's also a very difficult conversation because for us, our advocacy has been around women's inclusion and participation. And when we look at it from the gender perspective, the reason why there's been a focus on gender as women is because our systems are patriarchal. And what patriarchy does is it gives privileges to men on a lottery of birth, that because you are male, you have certain rights and privileges accorded to you that are denied to women. So it has been about inclusion, it has been about fairness, it's about women's rights being recognized as human rights, okay? Now, I think that it's a different conversation where somebody decides that they want to manifest themselves as a different sex. Right now, we're conflating issues between sex and gender because gender is a social construct. So being female is not a social construct. It's a biological issue, right?
The term gender with the issue of transgender, gender reassignment, it's becoming very complicated. You as an advocate of women's rights as well, how then do you embrace this generation of people that are coming up? If I was a man, I have a gender reassignment. I'm a woman today. Will you be greatly shy to embrace me?
Let me say this, and I know it's not politically correct, but I also think that it's very unfair for men who choose to be women to now become the voice of women. I find it like an erasure of women, okay? Because there are certain things that a man will never have, even if you choose to change your sex and even undergo reassignment surgery. There are certain things that you still won't be able to do. You won't be able to menstruate. So you're not going to know the challenges that women and girls who undergo menstruation are going through. And there are many other issues. I mean, being a woman is not just about physical features. It's about the exclusions that women suffer. And so for me, I think that we need to be clear. There are parts of this world where this is a real thing. It's a serious conversation that they're having among themselves. But for us here in Kenya and in Africa, this is not a conversation because we're still at a point where women are dying in childbirth, where children are dying from diseases that are preventable. Girls still are not going to school. Girls are undergoing FGM. They're being married off when they're still children. There are so many issues that are affecting us, and that needs to be our focus. And I think there needs to be that respect. One of the things that I have found about the transgender agenda is that it's also very intolerant to dissenting views. And while we do not begrudge them the right to do their advocacy, it mustn't be forced on all people. We need to take our steps because we're still so far behind. You think about the issues of gender and how they have affected us as women in Kenya. We have a constitution that guarantees the inclusion of all previously marginalized groups and for us to address the barriers that have caused those marginalizations. We're now going into 12 years post-promulgation, and we haven't even put the enabling framework to allow for women to get into leadership positions, you know, because of the patriarchal mindset of our leaders, where they continue to legislate with that bias that women somehow are not, they're not entitled to political, social, and economic rights. When you think about places where they have what they call negotiated democracy, it is never about women because the people who negotiate are so deeply patriarchal, so they have a mindset that women and girls are not entitled to any rights. So we've still got a lot of work to do to address the exclusion of women and girls. And that's why when we talk about gender, it's seen as a women's issue because women have been excluded because of the gender norms within our societies that are entrenched through patriarchy. That's the conversation that we need to have. Now, when we begin to integrate those other controversial issues, because remember that patriarchy is not just cruel to women, it's also cruel to any other different kind of manifestation.
Thank you. Let's just leave it at that for the moment, because even if we hark back into history, we have the atavistic nature of man that even from the medieval era, women and children were not counted as part of a population. It was only the men. And maybe if we gravitate deeply to the counties as well, because it talks about this patriarchal nature of our society. How then, as a deputy governor, for that matter, of Makueni, have you been able to come face to face with this sort of mentality that we still carry on, that we don't look at you as somebody who can actually be on the table and give, decisive frameworks of policy, legislation, and also steamroll the county head?
Yeah, one of the things that I want us to really start addressing is the issue of socialization, how men and women are socialized. And until we start demystifying, we start unlearning, men start to unlearn, women also start to unlearn, then we are moving somewhere. Because as a deputy governor, for example, with a governor who is actually male, it's like I'm a second, I'm not seen. Most of the forums where I go with the governor, I stop to exist. because for them, the governor, a leader is a man. And the leader is the one who has the answers. So this woman, because we still perceive women as people who are not leaders, because we've been socialized that way.
But
for example,
Your Excellency, if I may just say, Martin, is it because of that office that you are in, you're a woman, or is it because constitutionally also the office of a governor is not given that much impetus in terms of duties? So when you go with the governor, of course, now you'll take the whole preeminence of that particular...
The office of the deputy governor. I think that's not the issue. That's not the issue, because we are actually elected from the same platform. But I'm being elected with a man who actually has been socialized to see a woman as a follower, not a leader or a person beside him. So it's until we actually start unlearning this, we start actually looking at how we've been socialized and how we perceive each other as men and women. I mean, even a young man, because I'm a woman, I'm a deputy governor, it really I'm being seen as a woman. Most of the time, they address me as mama, while most of the time I ask them, why are you addressing me as mama? And when the governor comes along, you address him as a governor, excellence governor. Na mimi ni mama. And yes. So, you know, it's so annoying. It's very, very annoying that we need, first of all, to start struggling with socializing our young people, really to start understanding.
2010.
The 2010 Constitution clearly gives us equal rights, clearly gives us equal opportunities. But go to the counties, and in the first term of devolution, how many governors did we have? Women? None. In the second, we had 3. And now the second one, we have only 6 deputy governors because they don't see a need of women coming into leadership.
You have your own council as well as deputy governors headed by, is it Arwasa? Do you normally...
Is a council to mourn and ground of how our governors are treating us. They are so powerful. You know, one of the things that have been conceptualized wrongly in the Constitution and in the acts that guide devolution is governors have been given a lot of power to domesticate. I'm not actually even talking about the men themselves.
Yes.
I'm also talking of the women, because we have not analyzed patriarchy. We have not analyzed how do I want to see leadership as a woman. What values am I bringing? What beliefs am I bringing? Am I only looking at the structures, patriarchal structures? What kind of structures do I come up with to actually show that they are feminine and masculine? Because both of them are beautiful. You've got to really balance between your feminine and your masculine. But the men, most of the time, and the women, most of the time, the feminine really dominates the woman. And that makes it naive. We're being looked at naive. The men...
But that's
really,
your nature.
No, that's not nature.
No, the femininity. I mean, it's feminine. Or what?
What
feminine.
naivete is...
No, I'm not saying naivety. I'm just talking about the femininity in it. Because, I mean...
No, but you need
we should
for you to
celebrate
become a beautiful man, you really need to grow your feminine. Yes.
Oh, okay.
For me to become a beautiful
You see,
woman,
Rob-
I've got to balance between my feminine and my masculine.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is getting a bit philosophical.
No, it's not.
You're watching Siasa Bomb, but of course the topic at hand is gender roles vis-a-vis population growth. How can this become an agenda in our elections and law reforms process? And we are heading to another cycle of election. And I know you've been also a feisty advocate in gender mainstreaming as well. Are we headed anywhere? Are we batting our heads on the wall? Is there any political will? We know these matters that have been in courts. We ought to dissolve also the cabinet because, there's no gender parity at the end of the day. Daisy, yeah.
Well, one of the most unfortunate things about the first government elected under the new constitution is that they have succeeded in making the law impotent. If you look at Kenya right now and you look at what the constitution provides, really this administration has ensured that there is no relationship between Kenya and the constitution. The rule of law has been thrown out of the window. Constitutionalism is dead. And basically they do whatever they feel like doing. Like literally, they're just coloring outside the lines. With regards to women and inclusion, we have not, the Article 100 has never been enacted. There's no framework to implement the 2/3. IEBC, when they issued the Gazette notice announcing the date for the elections and now signaling the countdown now to 2022, they actually put in place some requirements and principles. No mention was made of party lists having to meet the 2/3 gender principle, inclusion of persons living with disability, and participation. You know that inclusion is a very central part of the 2010 Constitution, and devolution is also about inclusion, bringing in previously marginalized, areas. So likewise, in terms of representation, that's supposed to happen. So we are not seeing it. We are seeing the usual mobilization. Women and youth have been a very powerful resource for mobilization around the ballot. But beyond the ballot, there is no place for them. And so we are seeing that again. So youth groups, women groups are being mobilized to dance for the usual suspects. But there's nothing being said in terms of how we are guaranteeing a third of all elective positions will be women. How are we guaranteeing that 5% of persons living with disability will be on the ballot? So none of this is being said. So we've really completely backslidden. We've backslidden to a pre-2007 existence,
But do you think also this is good, a sporting chance for you, even if we have this particular space for you, if they're coming for you, you can actually now tell them, hey, this is our stand as well, that we want this entrenched also in manifestos. We have the political parties bill that was assented to also recently as well.
Which I'm sure will be challenged in a court of law.
Yes, but also there are some goodies for women, aren't there?
Are there?
What
First of
goodies?
all, listen,
What goodies?
women don't want goodies.
No.
Women want
Okay, maybe that
adherence
is
to the
is
Constitution.
I know.
Okay, we want adherence to the
Right.
Constitution. It's those things where the men patronize you and say, we care about women. It's not about caring. Follow the law. The Constitution says not more than 2/3 of the same gender. Implement that. You're right when you say that this is an opportunity for us, and we've taken it. Actually, we are in the process of developing a charter of inclusion with demands to institutions of governance tasked with delivering the elections, because we forget that elections are about the people. So when you talk about development and getting people on board, we are also not just talking about women for the sake of women, because the post 2013, we had the highest number of women coming into public office, since independent Kenya. So we've also seen that just in as much as we've had corrupt and inept male leaders, we also have women who have also not met the standard. So this is the chance now for us to have a conversation about the caliber of women we want. Because remember, our argument has always been consistent, that women bring something different to the table. So we don't want women bringing the corruption, the marginalizations, and the same bad behavior we've seen with men to just because they are women. We want to see women actually bring in transformative leadership, women who lead with skill and integrity, women who bring better outcomes, not just for women, but for everybody. Because we say what's good for women is good for everybody.
Exactly.
So this is what we are working on, that through the Charter of Inclusion. And we hope that it will have an impact, mobilizing women.
You're working with who? You as Crown or?
Yes, as Crown Trust, the National Women's Steering Committee, supported by Global Affairs Canada, and we have several other groups. We also have the Angaza movement. That, which is it's a movement of civil society groups that are looking specifically at the politics of our elections. The tagline is Mulika Kura. So we've seen that there's a lot of apathy in terms of a registration of new voters, but also disillusionment from existing voters, because people are like, what's the point of voting? Our lives are not changing for the better. It's the same old, kind of thing. because these people have opened so many battlefronts for people that people are tired and they are throwing in the towel. They're like, you know what, do whatever you want. So we're also mobilizing Kenyans not to be defeated, because we actually believe that we are at a threshold of making a difference or totally backsliding forever and, undoing the work that has been done by so many people like Governor Adelina, who worked behind the scenes. Many of the things that we call women, we celebrate in the Constitution 2010 as women's gains. It is Governor Adelina and women like her that actually fought for those frameworks and organized around them. So, we would also not be doing a duty of service to the women who worked so hard to ensure certain constitutional frameworks. And you would imagine that with the Constitution being the supreme law of the land, that it's guaranteed. So we need to actually deal with this issue of impunity and lawlessness.
All right, I need to just raise also the issue of affirmative action. And I remember there was a debate earlier. It never saw the floor of the House, but Gladys Boss-Sholei had come up with that particular draft that, there should not be any affirmative action for women, especially when it comes to seats in parliament. They should be going out there and fight like the men. And then it tapered off. I think that was really fought. But don't you think, no. Here's the point. If you're arguing that we should be treated as men, why then should you be having this affirmative action and the slots for the women? Why can't you go outside there and, toil and moil like any other man outside there, seeking the votes, going for the campaigns? Why are you surprised?
Well, look at what is happening now with the three horses.
Yes.
Who do you see? Who do you see now? Look at the earthquake. Was it the earthquake of Sunday? Who did you see? Majority of them were men.
Is it because you're not invited?
There were women invited, but where were they sitting? Where were they sitting? And why were they sitting there? Because they do not own political parties. They do not have the income. They have not grabbed as you people have grabbed. And therefore we are starting. We are actually not starting at the same level. So how can you say affirmative action? How can a woman in her senses really talk about us really not insisting on actually the 2/3 gender role? That look at even
but
the 47.
Look at the 47. Diametrically different.
No,
Look at the 47.
Yeah.
Look
They're
at
not.
the
Look at the 47. Sorry, I
look
lost
at the
track of
47 women in parliament. What role do they play? They are actually they have bigger constituencies, but look at the CDF. Who does it go to? It goes to people. It goes to men who have single constituencies. And how many women have actually gotten elected from around 23 around 23 women. So we are not yet.
But there's a kitty also for the women, right?
Yes.
What kitty? What kitty? How much is it?
Comparable to the
How much is it?
Yes.
And what are they given that money for? That is the question. CDF is education. CDF is security. The kitty for women, it's giving tents. Sanitary towels.
Bursaries.
It's really as and I want to agree with Desi that we have actually gone back, even with a constitution that we struggled so much. We've gone back to the 90s. Really, we do not care to implement the constitution. I mean, look at the advice that the president was given by the former Chief Justice. To actually, how many years down the line for them to pass that law? But the men we elect are the ones that in the 5 minutes when a motion comes into Parliament, they defeat it because for them they perceive themselves as leaders. They've never started to see women as leaders. They've continued to perpetuate that women are there to be heard, women are there to be at home. Look at the women's work. It's not, look at the GDP we have. It doesn't actually recognize the work that women do. It doesn't. And yet, if women of this country said one day, 1 hour, they are not breastfeeding, it will going to cost this country a lot of billions of money. So I think we need to go back to the drawing board and need to understand these issues and why women are actually not and will not be able to sit in the same platform as the men.
Right, but looking at the Nordic countries, especially because also they've been very keen to trying to push the agenda of women as well. There is the aspect of the golden scut, especially in boards when it comes to business, that yes, you've been advocating to have a space, and so we give you that particular slot, but all that you do is just sitting pretty with your gold scut. Yeah, at the end. No. I'm just giving you the reality on the ground. Yeah, because yes, but this is the aspect that you're talking about. Even when you're given those women reps, at the end of the day, without that requisite amount, even a modicum of the fund that you get, don't you think maybe it's the onus also of the legislator to try and seek other partners to try and bolster? I'm not saying necessarily you can go out of your way. That's what I'm saying. When we create these things, these spaces, then affirmative action, at the end of the day, the syndrome of a golden scat comes to play at the end of the day.
No.
You're sitting on the board, so your role will just be maybe taking notes of, the board meeting, and I'm just saying the reality on the ground.
Listen, Dibal, I think that we need to understand two things here. First of all, our Constitution, Article 27(6), recognizes it actually lists the measures that must be taken to redress the marginalization that has been suffered by previously marginalized groups. And they cite those groups: women, youth, persons with disability. Those include policy, legislative, programs, and affirmative action. Okay, why affirmative action? This marginalization has extended in certain ways. There's been cultural and social exclusion, whereby women are not allowed to own property, to own land, or even to work, to earn and create productive resources that allow them to have disposable income. So you have that marginalization. Then there's the economic marginalization. Listen, it wasn't until I think the 80s that women were actually allowed to open accounts without the permission of their husband or their father or the state did not actually recognize women's right to self-agency. So women have not been able to advance themselves. All this while men continue to advance themselves. Remember that for the longest time, a male child had more rights than an adult female. The state recognized a boy child more than it did an adult woman. She had no right, self-agency, or even right to self-determination. It was your father, it was your husband. If you had none of those, it was your brother. If you had none of those, it's the chief. I mean, you couldn't speak for yourself. 2010 Constitution comes in, and we still have to reverse that, okay? So when we're talking about women's inclusion in the politics, we look at what are the roles that women play. One, there's the unpaid care that Honorable Adelina here has talked about. Women do a lot of work that is unpaid, that contributes to paid care. Much of what you people do running around, you are supported by what women do for which they are not paid. Child care, housework, looking after sick children, sick parents, sick,
Washing their socks.
Washing their socks, washing your clothes, cleaning up and everything. Work for which, if the woman is not in the homestead, if you were to ask the women around here who are not in the homestead, right, they are out working, they've paid somebody to actually do that work. But when the women do it in the homestead, they're not paid for it. Now, you've talked about Nordic countries. Many of them have actually put measures in place. So among the things that we have been advocating for, even
as we talk about gender mainstreaming, is for the state to recognize the contribution that women make through unpaid care work and begin to support them. Like in the counties, they can put early childhood centers, creches, where women can take their children are safe while they go out to work. In the absence of that, the woman has to stay home and look after the children. She can't go out and work. She can't go out and earn an income, okay? She's even denied. You'll find that if women go, you know that women have been penalized for engaging in motherhood. I mean, like penalties where you're fired because you're pregnant, or companies just don't want to deal with women who are of childbearing age because of the inconvenience that they will suffer. So we have to put in place those measures. I think Safaricom is one of the companies that have done that, you know, where they have a creche where mothers can come to work with their children, and you can keep your kids in that creche area, you can breastfeed them and everything. So the women are able to work while earning a living. Much of the hypocrisy also of patriarchy was exposed during COVID. COVID allowed for everybody, not even allowed, forced everybody to do what? Work from home. And suddenly, the whole world recognized that you could actually work from home and be productive. This is what women have been asking. Give us the right to be able to work from home. But until men could work from home and be productive, women were not being allowed to work from home and be productive. So COVID also exposed the hypocrisy of patriarchy that has denied women over the years, decades, right to work from home and be productive simply because they are women.
But looking at it, because also we are pinched for time, listening to both of you, it seems that we've not made any advancement in terms of that particular space when it comes to gender as well. We have, you know, the marriage bill is an act right now that you can actually equally share, you know, also property as well. I think that is a big win over the years, you can say. Yeah, something. So it's not all, you know, doom and gloom as far as, you know, gender mainstreaming is concerned. Something is happening.
Yes.
But let's also center our focus on population, because the pressure is there and is likely to disadvantage women with the rising concern of food security. We've seen this also telling pictures from our televisions, you know, even some women, you know, who are cooking stones, so to speak, yeah, so that at least their children will have, you know, the notion that, yeah, food is actually, you know, cooking, you know, in the kitchen right now. Let's just wait and, you know, during that time they fall asleep at the end of the day. So women are likely to spend more time doing subsistence farming, yet they have no control of the land. And this is where I'm talking about the marriage bill as well. Most women also are registered under men in their lives. Customary laws continue to dominate and to be dominant and enshrine sexism and patriarchy as well. Maybe you can actually talk on that a little bit, and also Daisy, support and maintenance of children and the legal position in Kenya as well. This has been also a ticklish issue as well. So as we marinate on that, Adelina, you can actually take over with the population pressure.
The population. When you talk of population, you're actually talking of women reproductive role, which I think it is important to understand. Reproductive roles are both for men and women. And until we engage men, until men really realize they have a role to play in reproduction, then it becomes very, very hard to actually talk of population, because the woman has very little power to actually say when she needs to, when she can have children. Contraceptives, most of them are targeting women. They are not targeting men. Most forums are also targeting women. They are not, and yet we do not understand, and yet we really need to understand that women have no power over their sexuality. Again, going back to patriarchy and how patriarchy controls women's sexuality. And that is the same thing that is being perpetuated by what we actually, what we do in terms of helping women to give, helping families to actually discuss on how many children, when. And since this woman has no power, she's a subsistence farmer. The husband works maybe in Mombasa or Nairobi. He comes home. She is she gets pregnant, and the man leaves. So she's left with the 1, 2, 3, and even it's going to be worse with teenage pregnancies now, with teenage mothers. It's going to be even worse now, because this woman who has 5 children, her daughter who is 10 or 11 or 14 has given birth. Look at that burden. And this is a subsistence. So until we actually engage men, and seriously engage men to understand their reproductive roles, and that they actually must be, for us to deal with the issue of population, men and women must actually participate, to actually, so that the decision is made by both men and women. How many children can we afford?
Thank you. Thank you. Daisy.
That is one of the good elements of the Constitution 2010, that both parents have responsibility over the child, whether or not the parents are married. You know how you people behave. You know, you live your best life yet, sow your wild oats, and you leave, people in your wake. Women have struggled to raise children on their own, with men not taking responsibility. So I think that's a good thing. The enforcement of it is another thing. But at least we have the law, the framework. The Marriage Act, the Marital Property Act, it is still controversial, because we're still in that place where, where if you come to the marriage with certain property, it's yours, and then what you jointly own then can be discussed. But then what about the time that you take to make that property productive, because we still must remember that women for the longest time have been denied land ownership rights, whether inheritance or ownership. So we're still at a place where, of course, the men, majority of marriages, it is the men who own the land. But you'll find that many women actually are the ones who make the land productive. So I think that that's still an area that we need to discuss. So we're not out of the woods, but the good thing is the conversation is happening.
Thank you.
The conversation is happening, and we are not going to be silent. For as long as we have breath in us, you can be sure we'll be going toe-to-toe with them, because social change doesn't, the law is a tool for social change, but the change really does take time. It can take decades, but it also depends on the kind of leaders that you have.
Right. Thank you so much. We are pleased for time. I really want to thank you, Honorable Adelina Mwao, Deputy Governor Makueni County, for also, the solitary effort that you're making in making sure at least the gender voice is put there on the table, and of course that megaphone is blown for people now to hear that yes, issues of women need to be mainstreamed. And Daisy and Danny, I want to thank you so much for a very cordial discussion that we've had as well. He is the Executive Director, Community Advocacy and Awareness Trust, that is a contrast. We want to thank you so much for electing graciously to be part of this conversation on Siasa Bomba. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we needed to go to the matrimonial act.
Yes, matrimonial act, but we are pleased for time for another day. And thank you so much on appearing on Siasa Bomba. Yes, you've been watching Siasa Bomba. Thank you for your valued company. I am Dipala.
Okay.